today we are doing CSS. Remember in the HTML, when we have this task, look how awful it looks. There's zero styles, there's nothing, there's just raw content. So that's why browsers, besides HTML, which literally just defines the structure, the content itself, without much more to it, the CSS is a styling language, which basically you fetch an HTML element, apply some styles to it, and that's it. That's the whole thing. So again, the apps, the browser apps, are done using multiple tools. HTML to define the content, CSS to style the HTML, and then JavaScript is the actual programming language to bring some more dynamicness to your apps or to your web pages or websites, whatever. So in the CSS folder, we have the lesson MD. And then here we are going to go through all of these sections. So CSS cascading style sheets. You don't need to remember any of this stuff. Like, who cares? So the only thing it does, it's a style language for HTML, as I already said. How it looks. So CSS, we write it in usually in the files ending with .css. And we can add those files to HTML in multiple ways, which we are gonna come to later. So now the main syntax, how do you write CSS? So we have a selector and then the bracket, opening bracket for the styles, and then a closing bracket. So between those brackets, we write a bunch of rules, CSS rules or styles to apply to the element we selected right here. So this is called a property, and then you have a colon, you have a property value separator, and then the value itself. And then basically you can put below this a bunch of different rules you want applied, or basically CSS styles. It sounds more complicated than it is. So basically, the important part is we select an element, we in these brackets add a bunch of CSS styles, close the bracket, that's it. And once we import the CSS file inside our HTML, you'll see styles applied in the tab. I already mentioned this during the HTML tutorial, is you have the HTML element, which is like a huge big parent of your entire HTML file, and then you have a body, and body is a child of HTML. But HTML elements inside the body are children of the body, right? So body is the parent of all of these elements. And then these elements in the same level are called siblings. And again, these elements of the div element are the children. And we can just very quickly do that. So, sorry. So here, if we start an HTML file, here we have a head element and we have some title inside, right? And then we have a body element. And then inside the body element, we have heading 1, and then we have div, and div inside has whatever, another heading 2, and it has a paragraph element. So heading 2 and paragraph are called siblings, right? And if I add some text here, and to paragraph I add some span element, whatever. So H2 and paragraph, because they are on the same level, span is nested inside of the paragraph. So heading 2, paragraph, and span are not the siblings. Only heading 2 and paragraph are siblings, like they are direct brothers, sisters. And then, but H2, paragraph, and span, these are all children of the div. And also div is a parent for all of them, but then also div is a children of body. I mean, it's just basic logic. Whoever wrapped around you is your parent, and then everything inside is a children of that parent. We need to create a CSS file, put some styles into it, and then attach that file into the HTML. So if you remember, in the head tag, we add stuff that we don't see as content on the page, it's like meta details, styles, title, whatever. So it goes into the head tag, and you use the HTML element called link, put some attribute rel style sheet, and then ref, and then the link to your CSS file. If you, again, many times in the beginning, I didn't remember this, even though you're looking at it right here. You can always easily Google how to add my CSS to my HTML file and just apply what you see in Google. But there are 3 ways to add. This is how you attach the entire file, CSS file, to your HTML. You can also write CSS directly inside your HTML file. So you open the style element, opening and closing tag, and inside you write some CSS. Or you can put CSS directly on your HTML element. So the attribute is called a style, and this, again, all HTML elements have this common attribute, so it's called style. You open the quotes, and then inside you put a bunch of rules: color orange, font size 13 pixels, whatever. So you can add inline styles to any HTML element. The attribute is named style equals, and then you can add quotes, and inside bunch of CSS rules in this format: color orange, font size 13 pixels, and so on. Usually we put all the CSS in the CSS file, but there are certain use cases where you want to add CSS directly to your HTML element. If you remember, this image is explaining this is entire, like it's a link element. Here is the content, here's the closing element, closing tag for a link element, and then this is the opening one. And we have 2 also common attributes between all HTML elements. One is class, another is ID. So class, you can put divided by a space, bunch of different class names, and a single ID value if you want to. And we'll see right now in the CSS why these are important. So these are done so we can select an HTML element and apply some styles to it. So here we have a couple of, there's many ways to select an HTML element, but the main ones are class selectors, ID selectors. You can select directly all HTML elements of certain tag name, and there are some more specific ways to select things. But mostly we are going to use classes and ID selectors. So class, this is the syntax. So if we add cat here instead of main heading, that would be our class name. And we would select it in CSS by using the dot as a prefix. So we would say dot cat, background color yellow. Basically, it would select. So classes, you use a class when you want to apply it to multiple HTML elements on the page. And then basically, instead of styling every single element independently, you just put a same class to all those HTML elements, and then just add one CSS rule, and it will be applied to all elements that have that class name. The ID, on the other hand, is a prefix by a hash, and then whatever the ID name is. The ID should be unique on that HTML page. So that on one HTML page, ID with a certain value, the value should be unique on that entire page. It should not repeat. So basically the cat is if you want to select multiple things with the same class name. ID is you want to target very specific HTML element on the page. Then you can edit a specific ID and then select that ID like this and apply some styles to it. That's the main difference. Similar to class selector is element tag name. So if you just put h1 and add some styles to it, these styles will be applied to all heading 1 elements on the page, which makes sense, right? We are targeting all heading 1 elements, well, or paragraph elements or whatever. So we have to manually add class names if we want to put it in different HTML elements. We select, these are applied to all elements that have that class name. If we want to target a very specific element, just one on the page, we can add a specific unique ID to it and then target it like this, select it, apply some styles to it. if we want to, again, apply some styles to all HTML elements on the page, we can just use the tag name, select it like this, and apply some styles to it. We have a couple of more advanced selectors. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to select HTML elements. One of them are right here. For example, when you use this less than, greater than sign, basically it means select all list items, so li elements that are direct children, so direct children of the UL element. So basically, if you have, sorry, so basically if you, for example, here we add a list and we have a bunch of li elements like this, right? And then maybe in that li element we have another nested list, right? Like this. So if I say the CSS rule is UL like this, and this is our selector, it would select all direct children. So basically only this li and this li. It wouldn't select all of these li's, right? Just these directly nested children of this UL. They will be targeted if we add font size 13 pixels, whatever. So that style will be applied to this one and this one, but not these ones here. If we don't use this sign and we only put the space between UL and li, it will target all li children of the UL parent. So basically all of them, these ones and these ones inside everything. And then basically if you use asterisk, for example, direct like this, for example, sorry. So let's say we have div or a class, so let's say cat, and then everything here, and we say color orange. So, and then of course this is not how you write the CSS, I'm just writing here to explain the example. Anyways, so if you create a div and then we apply it class name cat, so it will target this div specifically, and we add a heading one, and we add a paragraph, and we add any whatever, a link, whatnot. If we put an asterisk, it would mean target all the direct children of any HTML element with this class. So target any element, not specific element. So if you put a specific one, it will target all direct children of the HTML element that has a class cat, that are H1 elements. But if you put an asterisk, it targets anything which is a direct child of an element that has a class cat. And then basically li last child. So again, if you go back and have UL and then li element and another li element and another li element, if you add this, for example, selector, li colon last child, it would only target the last child. And this is very useful if you want to add a margin for each child, so some space below each child, but we don't want the last child to have, sorry, space below each child, but we don't want the last child to have any space below because there's nothing below that one. Then we can target only the last child and put whatever space we added to each element to 0. So only the last one doesn't have any space, but all the other ones have some space to it. But now finally, let's see how the syntax in CSS is and what kind of CSS rules or styles you can apply. There are many styles you can apply to your HTML elements. We are going to go through a couple of them, and you'll see very soon in an actual example how it looks and what it is. I'm just going to quickly explain through here what some of these styles are. So visual style, I kind of divided them in like 3 main type of styles. So you have visual styles, you have like colors, font sizes, and then you have box styles, some spacing you add inside the element, outside the element, and so on. And then the layout styles, like if you want to order your like children within a parent, all of them to be on the left, all of them to be on the right, there's space between the children, all of them to be in a one row, all children to be in a column, ordered in a column, and so on. So there's like layout styles, and we have spacing you can add inside outside elements, and then the visual styles like font size, color, background color, and so on. So the main ones for visual styles, I would say, are like font size. Pixel is just a measurement in web development. One of the measurements, basically units, you can define the size of a font. And we are going to see right in very soon in an example. So then you have a color. This is a color of the font. The background color is the background color for that HTML element or a div element, whatever. Text transform uppercase transforms all letters within a heading to be uppercase letters. Font weight, this is if the font is bolder, like here, here the font weight is probably 400. Here is bolder, like it's more fat um, characters. Then you have div. We can define the width. Is the width 100% of the screen, or is the height 100%, or in this case, height is fixed to 400 pixels. So basically the 400 pixels is a very specific size in the fixed size in your web page. Then we have box styles. So in box styles, and I'm going to explain each of them right after I just go through all of this very quickly. So you have HTML element. An HTML element is everything from the right of this border, right? So if you want to add, so you have some content here, and if you want to add some padding with the inside of the element, some padding space, you can add a padding style. If you want to add a border to your HTML element, you can add a border. And if you want to separate your HTML elements from other HTML elements around it, you can apply a margin. So it will basically separate your HTML element from other HTML elements. So those are kind of different spacing styles you can add: a padding, a border, a margin. It will all make sense very quickly once we see an example. And then the layout styles is basically you have a header, an image element, and a button. We already did that in example before. So we wanna, and by default, they are either one below another, because these ones are by default inline, they don't take the full width. The button will be on the right side of the image, but they will be like right one below, one beside each other. If you want to order them for the image to be on the left and button to be on a far right, we can use the flex styles. So basically you need to apply these styles to the parent and say to the parent how you want that parent to organize its children. So this is the key part. It's not much harder than that. And basically this is the syntax. Display flex, saying you want this type of layout, ordering, whatever. Just remember it is as it is. You say the flex direction is row, so it's gonna order them in a single row, not in a column, but you can also put it in a column. And then you have justify content, space between. It's gonna put space between every child element. And we are gonna see right now the examples for it. So to recap, we have visual size, font size, color, background color, blah, 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 width, height, and so on. Then we have some box styling. We can add padding, border, margin. And then the layout style, how to tell a parent to organize its children. So these few is, you can do so many different things with this and create so many different cool pages just with few of these things. So first I created a style.css file, and it's in the same folder where my example.html file is. So it's a style.css. So now I added that style CSS. If you go back to how we add style CSS or CSS files to our HTML files, we can use a link HTML element to add it to our HTML. Once we did that, now what we want to do is, and again, if you remember the example of the last task we have in HTML, we basically had a header. One of the examples we had a header, an image, which is like a logo inside, then a button, then right after we had some headings, paragraphs, whatever. So what we want to do here is apply some stylings to the button, apply some styles to the logo, and apply some styles to the header. We want header to have a logo left, button right. We want logo to have a specific height and width and not be like huge on the page. And we want button to have some background color, some different color for the text and so on. So for the styles. And again, if you go back and see here, we added a class. We named it main minus header. This is our class name we applied to the header. Then to the image element, we added an ID of value. So this is the ID name, the logo. And that's pretty much it. So now let's target these specific ones, select them, and apply some styles to them. So here, if you want to target the class name main header, we add the dot as a prefix, and we added some layout CSS. So it's a display flex, flex direction is row, so it's in one single row, and then justify content is space between. And I'm gonna show you in the browser how you can test different values and see how they look. We added some padding to the header, some box shadows, some background color to the header, and so on. So for the logo, because it's an ID, we use the hash and we target this logo specifically. We added the height 40 pixels and the width is all those. So whatever the height is, the width will automatically adjust itself. And the button, we directly targeted the button element using the button tag name. And then we added the background color to be red, the color of the text to be white. There is no border, there's some padding, there's some border radius. If I open this page, what you can do is right click on the page and click inspect. And here the console will open where you can inspect your HTML page, and there is a small select icon right here. And if we hover and click over the header, you can see right here, this is our HTML file. You have HTML, you have a head tag, inside we have a title, the link element, and so on. You can collapse this, and then you have a body. And inside body, you have a header, you have an image element, and a button element. So what is cool about this view here is you can edit CSS directly from here. This is basically how I learned like what different CSS rules I can use and so on. So for example, in the header, and you can easily test things here and see it right away in the action. So see dot main header. So this is our class name. So we apply the flex to it for the layout. So this is the CSS rule. So flex direction, if we delete this, see it gives us a bunch of different options. If it's in a column, see it puts it one below another. You can row reverse it. Row reverse meaning it just reverses the position of the children, but we don't want that. This is not, no. We only want row. So it's in one single row. Space between, again, justify content. If it's center, we can center the children. If it's flex end, it pushes all the children to the right. If it's flex start, pushes all children to the left. If it's space around, it puts even even amount of space on the left and right side of each child. Space between is what we needed. A space evenly similar to space around with some different changes, some different values, but what we need is space between here. And then padding. So look at this. We'll add a background color pink. It doesn't matter. So if we add a 0 to the padding, see there is no padding. See how HTML elements are squished on the side. There is basically no space between an HTML element and the border of the header. So what we can do is add some padding. If we add a single value here, like 25 pixels, it adds a padding on the top, on the right, on the bottom, and on the left. If we add two different values, so 10 pixels, 25 pixels, and then space and 10 pixels, and you can test this out, so you can learn this very easily just by testing here. So if you add two values, the first value is for the top and bottom, and the right value is for the left and right. And you can easily test this. Look at this. Look at how left and right padding is being added here. It's not hard, right? And if we add the bottom and top, this is what happens, right? But if we add four values, so 5 pixels, 10 pixels, 15 pixels, 25 pixels, so this is the top value, and then this is the right value. It goes clockwise, right? So this is the bottom value, and this is the left value. So you can test this out. So basically, if it's 4 values, it's top, right, bottom, left. If it's 2 values, it's top and bottom, left and right. And if it's just one value, it's one value for all 4 sides. And see, this same rule applies to margin as well. By the way, you can also say padding top very specifically. So you added styles padding, like all 25, and if you add padding top, only the padding top will be overridden, and it's going to be the padding top added here, right? So now this is the padding. Margin, however, I told you is pushing outside. So padding is the space inside the HTML element. Margin is the space outside HTML element. So if I add 20 pixels like this, it's pushing, see, it's pushing header 1 element away from this element. So it's the margin, it's pushing outside, all the HTML elements outside. And it's the same thing, it's 15 pixels, 50 pixels. So this is top and bottom, this is right and left, right? If I add 25, it's all the 4 sides having this margin. And you can even see it here, like padding is inside, margin is here. So border, on the other hand, the syntax is the width of the border, the style, and then the color. Let's say purple, whatever. So the border, look how border is pushing within the element. So it's adding a border. So you have the content, you have the padding, you have the border, and then the margin is outside. So those are like 3 different boxing style rules. And this is what we previously discussed. And then basically the last thing we also went through is this just background color. You can add any type of, so the value for the colors can be actual words, some pre-existing colors. You can do whatever colors, but then there is also, you can put the hexadecimal values for the colors. You don't need to know these in advance or remember them. This is basically, you can click on this little icon here, choose a color, and this is going to be your value for this color. It's a hexadecimal value for the purple color. So basically, I usually do this. I never write orange or red. This is more precise if I want to find some proper color I want to apply. And same goes here. The value, hexadecimal value for white is FFF, or this is a shorter version. 6 of them is like a longer version, but if they're all the same, the shorter syntax is 3 Fs, or for the black is 0, 0. So this is the range from F to 0. And in between values are CC, 68, EC for this, for hexadecimal, for purple, whatever. You don't need to understand all of this stuff. Like click here, find a color, copy this to your CSS, whatever. And then you have font size you can apply. So see how font size changes. You find something that works for you. Font weight, you have 3, you can write in numbers for 400 or 600 or 800 depending what font you have, or you can write bold. You can see the values here, like bold, normal, lighter, darker, whatever. And then you also have a font family. So font family, usually you can like use some predefined fonts, Arial. You have serif fonts, which are the ones with like small edges changed. It's not like a smooth font. And then you have sans serif fonts, which are like smooth fonts for like, I don't know what different fonts. And then you have like a monospace font. So basically font family is to change the font, the font type, sorry. Font family. See, there's like even fantasy font. Monospace is like a very programmer type font. You can type in Google like different type of font families you can apply to your elements and so on. What I still encourage you to do is go to Web3 Schools, click on a CSS tutorial, and basically they also go through the same thing, the syntax, the selectors, how to select things, and they explain colors, and then background, like a background color, you can add a background image. You can see how to add it right here. Borders, margins, height, width of the elements, bunch of those CSS properties. And basically we have a CSS reference here, like with all the different CSS style rules you can apply. You don't need to know all of them. You don't need to know any of them in advance. Like, just if you want to color your button, put a background color or change a font size, just Google it on Google. How do I do this in CSS? And you will see a bunch of examples. This is, again, I'm repeating this more and more because this is the crucial thing. You don't need to know everything in advance. It's important you know this tool is used for this. This is how you use the tool. This is its purpose. And once you get into the use case, you can easily search and find the thing you need for your use case. So very quickly, we are going to do an example. So the task, we already shown an example. So the task you are going to have for this, and we can go to our GitHub and basically task folder and README. So it says, continue on with your HTML task you've done and apply some styles to it. So first create a style CSS file and add it to HTML file. Then add classes and some IDs as you see fit to your HTML elements so you can later select them in CSS. And here are the styles you need to apply. In the header, add a layout for flex, so basically display flex. Children should have space between them, meaning logo is on the left, button is on the right. Logo should have a smaller height and width should auto adjust. So like put height, I don't know, 40 pixels so it looks normal, decent. And button should have some styles added to it. Padding, font size, background color, border radius, I don't know, play with it, whatever you want to do. In the main content area, so add a font family to all your heading fonts. So to all your heading 1 fonts, for example. Then add a font family, a different one to your paragraph element. So you have one font for headings, a different font for your paragraph. Add some font size, color, text align, center, left, right to your heading element. That's another CSS style. Add a margin to your heading element, margin bottom. So we want title to be spaced from the paragraph element. So we want paragraph to be pushed away from heading for our, like, I don't know, 100 pixels, whatever, do whatever you want. Add line height to paragraph. Line height is basically adding the space between the lines in the paragraph. Then style all link elements in your page to be, so all your links on the page should be orange color. An image inside blog post should have maximum width of 700 pixels and should be in the middle of the page. So you can Google margin left and right to have auto value, which means it will auto, like if the picture is 700 pixels and the left and right margin is value of auto, it will center it in the screen. This is one of the tricks you can use. Then the footer, you can add some padding, background color to your footer, and also add a flex layout to the footer. So center it horizontally or vertically, however you want. And because we have a list of bunch of elements with links inside, you can also add a display flex to your UL element to the list itself. So the items are in one row. They are not one below each other. They should be in one row. And then add any styles you want to your elements, colors, spacing between them, whatever you want. I'll wait for you to finish.
A few moments later.
Okay, how was it? What you can do is also see my example how I handle it. So I added some class to the header. I added my CSS file here, and inside my CSS, I applied some styles to my image, to my header, to my buttons, font family, to heading elements. I added Georgia, Times New Roman, and fallback to the Sherry font. Font family to paragraph is Courier New. You'll see how you can add multiple font families in CSS. You can also Google this if you want to. And then the link elements are, all the link elements are of color orange. Image is centered, so 24 pixels above and below, and left and right margins auto. And maximum width is 100 pixels, so it's gonna be the maximum 100 pixels wide, and image is gonna be centered. And then the footer has some background color, list elements are all in one row, and they have some styling applied to it, and so on. And we can see this. So if I go, give me a second, CSS task, and basically index.html file, if I load it here, wow, it actually looks fine. It doesn't look terrible as it did in HTML tutorial. So basically, if you go inspect and you click here, you can see all the styles. Style for a header, we can see some styles here, and we can play around with them. Even with the box shadow, like you can see the shadow. You can play around here in the UI and see how the values change. You can play around with them to learn more about them. It's, nothing special, just whatever. The button has some styles to it as well. The text has a different font family, different line. So the line height is, if we add this, look at how the line height changes between the rows. It's a different font family. If I change this, the font family changes. Sorry. Margin bottom, it pushes the image below. And then in the footer as well, we have some padding. We have this list, and in this list, because it has display flex and flex direction row, instead of them being one below each other, they are in the same row. And each li element has some styles to it, some margin on the right, and link inside every li element has a color white. There is no text decoration, so there is no. So for example, if we remove this, they are all underlined. But if we move text decoration set to none, they will have no underscore below. So basically, you can Google each of those things, see what are the options. But this is like basic HTML and CSS and a bunch of stuff. Already with just these things in this tutorial, you can make so many different things. It's crazy. Like the combination of these styles you can make so many different web pages. So you already a lot far away from where you've been in the beginning. With just these things, you can do cover a lot of different use cases. Anyways, see you